Praise be to Jesus Christ, and welcome to Catholic Forum. I'm your guest host, Alan Dunst. I want to thank you for joining our conversation. And we're going to talk about a fairly difficult topic today for any Christian, let alone Catholics. And that is the idea of allowing oneself to use one's talents for God's purposes and making oneself available to do that. So we're going to kind of explore that, and to do that with me, I'm so honored to have Morgan Anding joining me.
Hello.
Thank you so much.
Of course, it's a pleasure.
And we're going to start off with a story about talents. That's in the book of Matthew, chapter 25. And it's about a man who's going on a journey, and he entrusts his property to his servants to take care of while he's gone. And he gives one 5 talents, to another he gives 2, and to one he gives 1 talent. And in those days, a talent was basically worth about 15 years worth of wages, so it's no small gifts that he's leaving behind. And so he goes off, and the servant with the 5 talents goes and does some trading and actually doubles his money. And the one with 2 talents does along the same lines. But the person with 1 talent is fearful of just losing what he has and doesn't want the master to be mad at him, so he just buries the talent in the ground. And when the master comes back, they're kind of given an account of what they've done with what he gave them. And so it's interesting how it turns out. We'll start here. One master came in and trusted me 5 talents, and says, "So see, I have gained 5 more talents." His master said to him, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You are faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master." And then the servant who had 2 talents comes in and says, "Well, you gave me 2 talents, and I have gained 2 more talents." And again, he says, "You've done well, a good and faithful servant." And the one who had received 1 talent came up and said, "Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you do not sow, gathering where you scattered no seed. And I was afraid and went away and hid your talent in the ground. See, you have what is yours." And the master responds fairly harshly, saying, "You wicked, lazy slave, you knew that I reap where I do not sow and gather where I scatter no seed. Then you ought to have put my money in the bank, where I would have gathered interest. Therefore, take away the talent from him and give it to the one who has 10 talents. For everyone who has, more shall be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who does not have, even what he does have will be taken away. Throw out the worthless slave into the outer darkness, in that place where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." So it does not end well for that servant. So the idea of talents, and the interesting thing about talents being in the gospel being money, but that word in our culture being meaning so much more in terms of different gifts that we have. Morgan, I was just intrigued by just knowing a little bit about your story and how you've are in that pursuit of using God's talents, the talents that you've been given. So we just want to kind of talk through that a little bit and just kind of share your journey a little, if we could.
Yeah,
right?
Of course.
So let's just start kind of from the beginning. Now, you've been raised Catholic?
Yes, my whole life, born and bred. I grew up in Grand Rapids and went to Catholic schools, and my parents sort of had a reversion later in their marriage and decided to homeschool me. So from a very early age, I was brought up with a very strong Orthodox faith.
So in terms of talents, let's talk a little bit about the talents that you've kind of noticed as you were growing up. What did people tell you were good at, or what did you have a sense of?
Growing up, it wasn't so much that I heard people say that I had a talent, but I knew that I had this love, this passion for music and for theater, and always wanted to pursue it from a very young age, from really childhood, 6 years old on up. It always piqued my interest. Going to see a show, auditioning for shows. I was always auditioning for Civic Theatre shows, always involved in theater arts day camps, things like that. taking piano lessons, taking violin lessons, and it was something that I wanted to pursue but didn't see it as a career or anything that would be my destiny. Yeah.
Okay. And as you were growing up, in terms of your faith life, how was that? Were you a pretty faithful person as you were growing up, or did you have any rebellion or any doubts that you struggled with? Or
no, there wasn't a stage of rebellion. I wouldn't say we. Since I was homeschooled and it was just me for most of the time.
Okay.
Until we adopted my younger sister, I was home with my mom. We would do school. We'd go to daily mass. We'd pray the Divine Mercy. We'd pray the Rosary. There was a lot of doing the movements, doing the motions, and I would pray just for a love of the Lord to be enkindled in my heart. And around age 16, that happened. I really made the faith my own, and for a while discerned the consecrated life, and later in high school, and discerned that wasn't what I was called to do. But so I've always been pretty close to the faith and have been actively living it out, and then furthered that in college when I went to Franciscan University of Steubenville. But of course there's a time, I think my time of veering away from the Lord's will or putting emphasis on priorities besides Him was later, after I graduated from college. So just losing perspective, being in the world and seeing how my upbringing was really, how it was the most important thing, a continuing process of making it my own.
Sure. Okay, so we're going to come back to that, but let's talk a little bit as you're growing up, how you were exploring this talent, this love of the theater and music. How you were homeschooled, so did you have a lot of opportunities to kind of explore that and put that out there?
Yeah, well, I was involved with Grand Rapids Civic Theatre when I was in their show, The Velveteen Rabbit. I was about 14, and that was my first main stage production. It was a big deal, and people paid for tickets and came to. And I took violin, I took piano. I was in the orchestra for a year. Let's see, so I pursued those talents, and then later on in life, I went to college and I didn't really use them as much. I focused more on ministry and that type of thing versus the musical and theatrical skills that I had. But in high school, I was in a couple of productions put on by Homeschooling Performing Arts, which is in the Grand Rapids, larger Grand Rapids area.
Okay. Awesome. And now you had been in a number of Civic Theatre productions after The Velveteen Rabbit, correct?
Yeah, I was in The Velveteen Rabbit, and then in more recent years, I was in Christmas Carol, Anne of Green Gables. I was involved in Sound of Music, Les Miserables, and Mary Poppins most recently. So, yes. So that's good if you had a chance to explore that. Better repertoire. Yeah.
So let's talk about. I want to go back to you're in the bit about being in college. Okay, you kind of we're stepping away from the musical thing a little bit, and you said that you were focusing on ministry, which you earlier before we started you kind of described that as a talent, and it is, right? It's kind of a gift to have the ability to relate to people, and a lot of people think of talents in terms of American Idol. I'm going to follow my dreams because I've got a good voice, as opposed to I'm good with people, or I have a way of making people feel comfortable, and that too is a gift, and that too can be used for God's purposes and such. So tell me a little bit about what you did in your college days.
So I had originally wanted to go to school for music, and I never saw talents as something that should be, maybe should is the wrong word, but could be pursued as a career for the Lord. I thought that I had to be doing something directly religious in order to please Him or do His will. And so when I went to Franciscan, I was a catechetics and theology major. which meant all of my classes were basically theology. And I was very involved with youth ministry. I led Edge youth ministry. I was in music ministry for Mass. And I went on mission trips, and I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to originally be a high school religion teacher, and then that transformed into younger middle school, elementary age students. And so I had that paradigm of thinking that in order to serve the Lord, the talents, my hobbies should just be on the side. And I do know that, yes, I do have a talent for ministering to high schoolers and elementary students. That's a love of mine. It's also a talent. But I didn't really incorporate both talents together in order to have this, integral gift back to the Lord. So, yeah.
Okay. So you did that basically throughout your tenure at Steubenville?
Yeah, at Franciscan, I was involved in just a lot of ministry, and also a women's a cappella group. So it was music and performing, but teaching and ministry were separate from that.
Okay.
And that was all throughout 4 years. We had a practicum we had to do our senior year. It was going into a classroom and witnessing it or shadowing a teacher and trying to put that into play, which helped, but it was not a perfect picture of what I really felt called to do. Still seemed like something was missing, but I knew it was a worthy cause, so I just kept going with that pursuit of teaching. So.
Okay. So then you got your degree, and what happened after that?
So after I graduated, I had been involved throughout my school 4 years. In the summers for the last 3 years of college, I was involved in something called Totus Tuus, which is a diocesan-run catechetical program just for the summers. And basically there's 4 team members that go out to 6 different parishes throughout the summer and run week-long catechetical programs for kids. And I loved it. I did it in Chicago. And on that, I also was a music leader. But again, connection was not being made of music and ministry. And so after my senior year, I did that for another summer, and I decided I wanted to teach in Chicago. So I stayed in Chicago, and I was a teacher's aide for kindergarten in a Catholic school. Came home and was a teacher's aide at Sacred Heart of Jesus Parish in Grand Rapids. And, it was great. But that's when I started getting involved in theater again. Because once I was home, I remembered that Civic was here. And it's just a high quality performance when you audition for a show there, go see a show there. So I got involved with that again, and that passion, that love was enkindled again. So I was teacher's aide for a year, and then they asked me on full time to teach 3rd and 4th grade. Not this past school year, but the school year before, so 2013, 2014. So I taught full time while also being involved in shows at Civic at the same time. And that was when I really felt this urge, this nudge to pursue theater as a career, which I had never thought of doing. And I had this mindset that I would be doing it for the Lord. And I wanted to abandon teaching, abandon everything in Grand Rapids. And I was actually accepted into Columbia College in Chicago to continue pursuing musical theater as a degree. And so that's what I was pursuing last year, as in the end of 2014. And then at the end of that summer, I had a sort of a change of, just a purification of intentions. I went on a long retreat and realized that I wasn't called to go to Chicago and pursue that as a selfish career. That I just wanted to be on stage and do this, and I was saying on the side, but it's for the Lord. So it was a perfect marriage of the two when I decided to stay home in Grand Rapids, and I went back to Sacred Heart and said, is there anything you need help with? Because I'm here, I can teach part-time, I can tutor. And they said, why don't you start our theater program? So that is what I have been doing for the past year. and it has been a really wonderful adventure.
Yeah, and relatively recently you just finished a production of Fiddler on the Roof.
Yes.
With the youngsters there. Now, what grade ranges were there?
5th through 12th grade.
5th through 12th,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, involving the full-time schoolers as well as the part-time homeschoolers that take classes there.
Yeah, and it was, I saw the show, and it was very high quality, especially considering the age ranges that you're working
Yes.
with. And, so, yeah, that was well, and an ambitious show.
Yes.
I have to say.
It was a large production.
Yeah. So, having done that, now my understanding is that you actually are looking at a new path from that.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about that.
Yes, so I will be doing a year of mission work with Net Ministries, which is all fundraised. I will not be paid. It'll be stipend, all fundraising on my own. And I'll be traveling around the United States. I don't know where yet. I don't know who I will be with. And I'll find out in August when I start training. But Net was something that had been in the back of my mind for the past 2 years. And it was really, there was a catalyst point where I was deciding, okay, either I'm going to do full-time ministry or I'm going to pursue theater. And I chose to pursue theater. And that's when all this happened, and I decided to stay home, and then felt this nudge again in my heart that even though I had found the perfect job of directing something that I'm so passionate about in a Catholic school with amazing families, holy priests, I loved it. It's the best job I've ever had. And yet the call to Net happened when I went on a long retreat actually in New Zealand. And I was surrounded by a community and was held accountable for times when I was wrong and when I was there to support the other group members that were there with me. And I really loved that, and I was reminded again of that earlier desire for doing a year of Net. So NET stands for National Evangelization Team, and it's been around for 35 years. It's a really wonderful organization that just runs retreats for high schoolers. So I had felt this in New Zealand. I really would love to do that, and it didn't make sense to me because I loved my job. And I loved theater and music and doing that as my main career. So I came home, and it was almost unmistakable. It was unmistakable that I was supposed to apply, and I applied and got in to NET. And so the interesting thing is that it was like the Lord showed me that He wanted me to pursue theater. Then He purified my intentions, showed me I could stay in Grand Rapids and still do that. And then He said, okay, now that you have chosen this, I'm going to take it away from you and see what you say. And so that's kind of what's happened. And it's been a very joyful experience. I haven't regretted it yet.
Well, very interesting. So now, when you go, into the Net ministry, do you foresee being able to again integrate the musical aspects of your?
So that's something that it kind of went back to originally when I was young, thinking very separately that I shouldn't use my talents. I don't need to always be in the spotlight. It's not for the Lord's glory. But when I applied for NET, I knew that they have a music leadership program that basically the people that they choose, you have to audition, send in a video audition, everything. You go in 10 days early, you're trained as music leaders, and then you will be the music leader for the year. Now, I knew that NET had this because my friend Sarah Driver, who also did NET, she told me, you really should do this. And I almost didn't want to be in that leadership role or be involved in music in that way. I kind of wanted this year to be a step back, that I'm very much in the shadows. I'm in the background. But honestly, ironically enough, that parable of the talents came up in my mind of, no, I have this talent and I need to use it. And if the Lord is asking me to be a leader, then I will be a leader. So I auditioned, and they said that they wanted me. So I will be leading praise and worship and helping organize skits. We do a lot of theatrical skits for retreats and for different events that happen throughout the year on NET. So I will definitely be very involved in music and theater for the year. And it's actually one of the questions they ask on the application, like, do you have any experience in music? Do you have any experience in theater? So I know that this is really a perfect combination of doing ministry full time, but also integrating my talents and thriving in those.
Sure.
And serving others through them.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and when is part of that ministry, are you actually just traveling around, or are you based someplace?
Yeah. There's 3 different types of teams, which I don't know which team I will be on. There's a parish team and the school teams that both stay in Minnesota. It's based in St. Paul, Minnesota.
Okay.
The Net Center is in St. Paul. And the parish teams and the school teams stay within the diocese, and they go around to different parishes throughout the year.
Okay.
Now, there's also a third type of team, which is the travel team. And a travel team is basically traveling to a different city every day. And you drive around in the Net van, the 12 passenger with your whole team, and you get sick of each other, and you go from place to place and you're exhausted. You set up retreats and tear them down in the same day and move to the next town. So both types of teams would be an adventure. With the home team, you get to go deeper in your relationships with the host families that you're staying with.
Sure.
Whereas the travel team, it's more of a bonding experience with your team because you are each other's family. Right. So then there's different regions you can be sent to. You can be sent to the South, you can be sent to the West Coast, East Coast, Midwest. So I don't know where I'll be.
Interesting. And you don't find out until August?
Correct, yeah. After music leadership team or training is done, then the regular training will start. We have 2 weeks of personal spiritual formation, which everyone that has done that has said is one of the most fruitful times of the year, because we are really filling our cup during that time. And then once they observe us and see different personality traits, they put us together on a team.
So that's how they figure it out,
Yeah.
where you're going to go, where your kind of personalities are meshing with the other team members.
Yes.
And such.
Yes, so it's very much a work of the Holy Spirit.
Oh, that's good. That's good. What has been the reaction of your parents as you're going through this journey, as they've watched you kind of go over here this way, and they
Well, they were there 2 years ago when I actually applied for NET originally, and I had told them I have this desire to do this, something like this, because I had done Totus Tuus, I had loved it, it was the best 3 summers of my life. And I wanted to do something like that again, and they said, go for it. And then I chickened out and decided not to interview. That was 2 years ago. They've seen the poll that I've been restless. And as St. Augustine says so perfectly, our hearts are restless until they rest in you, Christ. And that is really what I was feeling, this restlessness. And so it's interesting because my dad is a lawyer, he's a very practical person. And my parents have always been very supportive of everything that I've chosen to do. Even if it doesn't make sense, they put the ball in my court. And when I brought it up to my mom, she was excited. My dad said, if this is something that doesn't make sense to the world and you still want it, then maybe you should pursue it. And that was that's been a motto of mine since then. That was even before my interview. I didn't know if I was in or not. And I thought, this is not of me, this is of the Lord. So it's been a very positive experience with my family.
Oh, excellent. So it sounds like you've got your window of planning is about a year of devoted to this. Are you open to more than that, or are you thinking that that's about what you're thinking that you're going to do, and then maybe then you kind of go on another retreat and see what's next for you? Or
the beautiful thing about NET is I don't know. And I am tying up a lot of loose ends here to leave that possibility open of maybe I will feel a call to ministry elsewhere, or maybe I will feel called to come right back here and pick up where I left off with the formation I've received. But the beauty is I don't have to know.
Sure.
And I'm really leaving that wiggle room for the Holy Spirit for the first time in my life, really, to say, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't have to have a 10-year plan. I'm doing this year, and He's going to show me. A lot of people, there's an option to do a second year for NET. There's an option to be on staff, which means you're supervising teams for your second year. And that's a little higher of a stipend, and you live in a household with other staff members at NET. You can work for NET. You can stay and do youth ministry or be a director of religious education in Minnesota or other parishes that you've encountered throughout your year.
Sure.
So I really don't know. I would love to do ministry, but I also know that I love theater and I love music, and I would like to pursue that again in the future in some capacity. So, but that's a very distant goal. And right now, it's a beautiful thing to think that come August, my only concern will be to serve the Lord on a daily basis. And that's it.
Yeah, and that's just an awesome opportunity to, again, using your many gifts, right? Because clearly you have both interpersonal gifts and we call talents. We would call them talents, but performing talents and that kind of thing. So you've got a lot of options there, and so it's wonderful to see you again, just kind of being able to find a place to utilize them both in a way that both excites and challenges you.
Yeah. Yes, praise be to God.
So we're up, but just a few minutes left here, but in terms of advice, if you were telling your younger sister or somebody, in terms of how, in terms of pursuing, what God has given them, what would you offer them? What would you say?
Ad majorem Dei gloriam, that all for the glory of God. That a common misconception as Catholics or Christians is that we have to bury our talents, which doesn't make any sense because that's not what Christ says in the Bible. Pursue what you're passionate about, and you can do that for His glory. He will lead you to the right outlet to do that for His glory. So whether it's horseback riding, whether it's tennis, anything, you name it, you can do that for the glory of God. He wants us to thrive and live life abundantly. And honestly, this past year has been one of the most abundant years. I've been so blessed, even though I decided to stay in Grand Rapids, which is not a city of fame or glory like Chicago, where I was going to be. I have been so blessed with an amazing community, a community that supported me in ways I've never experienced before. A solid core group of friends that call me on to be a better person. And that came about because I was seeking His will, and I was just open. I knew what I loved, I knew what I was passionate about, and I was doing it, and He led me. And I just would say to just go where your heart leads you, and and be open to the Lord's will, and He'll show you where to go.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point that you bring up, is that all along your journey, you've taken those times to step aside and pray and kind of consider where your next thing you're supposed to be, and kind of allow yourself to be led, as opposed to kind of, this is my dream, and
right,
being kind of
going towards
single-minded without considering what's God got in mind.
Yes, and that's really the only way that I heard His voice with Net, because if it wasn't for silence and being taken away from the run of the mill of the world, I never would have considered applying again. So I would say, hands down, prayer and silence is the only way that He can speak. And to really give that time to Him, because otherwise you'll convince yourself you're doing His will when you're really doing your own will.
Right. Right. Well, I want to thank you for being with us so much, Morgan.
Thank you.
It was wonderful speaking with you, and we want to wish you the best and pursuing your talents and considering what God has in store for you as you apply those gifts to what He might have in mind. So in the meantime, we will continue praying for you in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.